There is a specific moment when you realize your silence has more power than any argument you could make. It happens quietly. You stop defending yourself. You stop explaining. You stop participating in their chaos. And something strange occurs. They become more aggressive, more desperate, more hostile. Why? Because your silence is doing something words never could. It is forcing them to hear the one voice they have spent their entire lives running from, their own, and what that voice reveals terrifies them far more than anything you could ever say. But here is what they will never tell you about why your peace feels like a threat to their entire existence. Most people live their entire lives without ever sitting alone with their own thoughts. Think about that for a moment. The average person reaches for their phone within 3 minutes of waking up. They fill every silence with noise, every moment of solitude with distraction, and they call this living. But what they are really doing is running from the one conversation they fear most, the conversation with themselves. When you appear in their life, calm, centered, unmoved by the drama they thrive on, you break an unspoken rule. You are not playing the game, and every game needs players. When you withdraw, when you stop reacting, you remove the mirror they were using to avoid looking inward. Suddenly, they are alone with the very thing they have been fleeing, and they panic. This is not cruelty on your part. This is liberation. But liberation feels like death to those still imprisoned. Carl Jung discovered something profound in his decades of working with the human psyche. He found that most people do not live their own lives. They live the lives that others expect of them. The dutiful son, the successful professional, the perfect partner. These are not identities. These are masks. And beneath every mask lies what Jung called the shadow, the rejected, repressed, denied aspects of the self. Everything we decided was too dark, too shameful, too real to acknowledge. Your silence forces people to confront their shadow, and that confrontation is unbearable. I once treated a woman who came to me in despair. She had a friend, someone she had known for 20 years. But recently, this friend had changed. She stopped responding to drama, stopped engaging in gossip, stopped participating in the endless cycle of complaint and validation that had defined their relationship. My patient was furious. "She thinks she is better than me now," she said. "Her silence is so arrogant." But as we explored her dreams, the truth emerged. She dreamed of standing before a mirror, but the reflection was empty. Just the frame. No face. She would scream at the mirror, demanding it show her who she was. But it remained blank. The dream was revealing what her conscious mind could not accept. She had never developed a self beyond the reflected validation of others. Without her friend's participation, she had no idea who she was. Her friend's silence was not arrogance. It was growth. But growth in one person always exposes stagnation in another. And the ego will always call growth arrogance to avoid facing its own refusal to evolve. Here is what you need to understand. When you stop engaging, you are not abandoning people. You are offering them the greatest gift possible, the opportunity to meet themselves. But most will not recognize this gift. They will call it coldness, distance, superiority. They will say you have changed, and they are right. You have. You have stopped participating in the collective agreement to remain asleep. The question is not why they hate your silence. The question is what your silence reveals about them that they cannot bear to see. Let me take you deeper. In the alchemical texts that Jung studied obsessively, there is a stage called solve et coagula. Dissolve and coagulate. Break down and rebuild. Psychologically, this is what happens when you withdraw from false relationships. The old structure dissolves. The persona you maintain to belong, to be accepted, to avoid conflict, it crumbles. And in that crumbling, people experience you as a threat. Because if you can break free, it means they can too. And that possibility is more terrifying than staying imprisoned. Your silence is not passive. It is alchemical. It is the fire that burns away everything false. But fire does not ask permission to burn. There is a pattern I have observed countless times in my work. A person begins the journey of individuation. They start facing their shadow, integrating their repressed emotions, speaking their truth, or in many cases, learning when not to speak at all. And almost immediately, their social circle erupts. Friends become enemies. Family members who once praised them now criticize. Partners who claim to want honesty suddenly demand the comfortable lies return. Why does this happen so predictably? Because the collective unconscious maintains itself through conformity. When one person breaks free, they weaken the entire structure. Your liberation is a threat to the prison. Not because you are attacking it, but because you are proof it can be escaped. If this resonates, take 2 seconds and hit subscribe. This work exists because of you. But here is where it gets even more interesting. The people who attack your silence most viciously are often the ones closest to their own awakening. Jung called this enantiodromia, the principle that everything eventually turns into its opposite. The person screaming that your silence is toxic may be 3 months away from their own breakthrough. Their aggression is the last defense of an ego that knows its reign is ending. You are not their enemy. You are their prophet. They just do not know it yet. Let me tell you about a dream that reveals this dynamic perfectly. A man came to me troubled by a recurring nightmare. In the dream, he was in a vast library. Every book was a conversation he had ever had, and he was frantically pulling books from shelves, reading aloud, performing dialogues with himself. But then he noticed a figure in the corner, a person sitting in complete silence, watching him. The silent figure never moved, never spoke, but its presence filled the dreamer with rage. He would run at the figure, screaming, demanding it speak. And the moment he reached it, he would wake in a cold sweat. The silent figure was not another person. It was his own self, the part of him that existed before he learned to perform, the part that did not need to fill every moment with noise. His rage was not at the figure. It was at himself for having forgotten how to be still. The dream was an initiation. It was calling him back to silence. But he was not ready. Not yet. This is the mechanism at work when people attack your peace. They are attacking the part of themselves they have abandoned. You are simply the screen onto which they project this inner war. So what do you do with this understanding? Do you explain it to them? Do you try to help them see? No. That would be falling back into the trap of needing them to understand, the trap of requiring their validation for your own peace. True silence does not explain itself. It simply is. The sun does not argue with the darkness. It rises, and the darkness has no choice but to recede. Your silence is your sunrise. Let them adjust to the light or remain in shadow. That is their choice, not your responsibility. But I must warn you, there is a shadow to silence as well. Some people weaponize it. They use the withholding of presence as punishment, the cold shoulder, the silent treatment. This is not the silence we are speaking of. This is the ego wearing a spiritual mask. True silence is not aggressive. It is not manipulative. It does not seek to punish or control. True silence is simply the refusal to participate in what is false. It is the boundary between your authentic self and the collective's demand for performance. How do you know the difference? Examine your heart. If your silence feels like a clenched fist, it is ego. If it feels like an open hand, it is soul. One seeks revenge. The other seeks peace. Be ruthlessly honest with yourself about which one you are embodying. The shadow loves to masquerade as enlightenment. As you deepen into this silence, you will notice something profound. The external attacks begin to lose their sting, not because you have become cold, but because you have stopped identifying with the role they cast you in. They call you arrogant. You feel no need to defend. They call you distant. You feel no need to prove intimacy. They say you have changed. You smile inwardly because you know you have simply stopped pretending. This is what Jung called the transcendent function. The ability to hold two opposites without collapsing into either. You can see their pain and not take responsibility for it. You can love them and not enable them. You can be present and not be entangled. This is the hallmark of an individuated soul. But the path to get there is not easy. You will doubt yourself 1,000 times. You will wonder if your silence is wisdom or cowardice. You will question whether you are growing or just growing cold. These doubts are not signs of failure. They are signs of consciousness. The unconscious person never questions themselves. They are too busy questioning everyone else. Let me share something I discovered in my own descent into the unconscious. There was a period where I withdrew from nearly all social engagement. My colleagues thought I had lost my mind. My family worried I was becoming a hermit. But I was not running away. I was running toward the voice beneath all the noise, toward the self that existed before I learned what others needed me to be. And in that silence, in that solitude, I encountered something extraordinary. A presence. Not the absence of something, but the presence of everything. The self in its totality, light and shadow, divine and human, integrated. When I emerged from that period, people said I had changed. They were right, but not in the way they thought. I had not become something new. I had returned to something ancient. The original pattern, the blueprint of my soul before the world told me who to be. Your silence is the same journey. It is not a departure. It is a return. Now here's what happens as you continue. As you remain unmoved by their projections, some will eventually soften. Not all, but some. They will stop attacking. They will grow curious. What is it about you that remains so peaceful? What do you know that they do not? They will not ask these questions aloud at first, but you will see it in their eyes. The softening, the opening, the beginning of their own awakening. And here is the most beautiful part. You will not need to say a word. Your silence will have spoken for you. It will have said everything that needed to be said. That peace is possible. That freedom is real. That you do not need to participate in the circus to have value. Your very existence becomes the sermon. This is the ultimate purpose of your silence. Not to escape people, but to become a living invitation. An invitation to the life they secretly long for but are too afraid to claim. Some will accept. Most will not. And that is perfect. You are not here to convert the masses. You are here to live your truth so radiantly that those ready to awaken will find their way to their own. There will come a day, maybe years from now, when someone who once despised your silence will approach you quietly. They will not apologize. They rarely do, but they will say something like, "I did not understand back then, but I think I am starting to." And you will smile. Not because you were right, but because they have begun the journey you cannot take for them. They have started to listen to their own silence. That moment is worth every attack you endured, every misunderstanding, every lonely night wondering if you were insane for choosing peace over acceptance. You were not insane. You were becoming sane in an insane world. Insanity always looks like madness to those still dreaming. So let your silence continue to terrify them. Let it expose their chaos. Let it reveal their inner war. Not because you wish them harm, but because you know that only in facing what they fear can they ever become free. Your silence is not a weapon. It is a mirror, and mirrors do not lie. They simply reflect. What they do with that reflection is their work, not yours. You have done your part by becoming whole, by choosing truth over comfort, by walking away from the noise and into the stillness where the soul finally speaks. That stillness is not empty. It is full of presence, full of knowing, full of the quiet power that needs no audience to exist. And in that fullness, you will finally understand what your silence was always about. It was never about them. It was always about you, about honoring the voice of your soul over the demands of the collective, about choosing wholeness over belonging, about becoming who you always were beneath the masks and the performances and the desperate need to be understood. You are the silence that terrifies because you are the truth that liberates. And liberation, though it looks like isolation at first, is the only path to real connection. Connection not to the masks others wear, but to the souls they hide. That connection is rare. It is sacred. It is worth every moment of misunderstood silence. So be still. Be unmoved. Be whole. The right people will understand without explanation. The wrong people never will, no matter how much you say. And in that knowing, you are finally free.